Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Now we will be looking at structure skill 5. Be careful of past participles. And okay, we have to remember, if you didn't watch skill 4 for structure, I recommend you watch that first. So in that one, I explained that a participle is something que se parte, right? It divides into two parts. In this case, a verb. So it can be a verb, but it could also be an adjective. And the problem here is that when it's an adjective, we may confuse it for a verb. And this is where we have to really detect which is a verb and which is an adjective, right? So basically in present participle in skill 4, we saw that it's a verb when there's some form of the verb to be in there, right? Like is, are, am, was, were, be, being, been. In this case, it's the same thing when we have some form of the verb be, but also when we have some form of the verb have, right? This is present perfect, right? Like I have eaten. She has sung a song, right? So let's look at an example. It says here, the family has purchased a television. In this case, purchased is going to be a verb because there is a variation of the verb have, right? Which could be has or had, right? In past also. Or for example, the poem was written by Paul. In this case, was written. Written is a past participle, right? And was is a form of the verb to be. So the past participle are the verbs that are in third row of a list of verbs. So for example, let's look at the verb, I don't know, go. We have go. In past, we have went. And in past participle, we have gone, right? So the past participle are these type of verbs, which are the third in a verb column, right? Or in a verb list, right? So if you have a verb list, check it out. If you don't, I recommend you just go online, put English verb list of regular, irregular verbs, PDF, and you'll have it, right? I have one, but I can't upload it to YouTube. But if you want, email me or put your email in the comments and I'll email you one, right? I have one. And okay, so when is it an adjective? It's an adjective when it is not accompanied by any form of the verb be or have, right? So for example, let's look at this one. The television purchased yesterday was expensive. Purchase here could seem like the verb, right? But again, we have to read the complete sentence. So here, if we read the complete sentence, we'll see that was is the verb, right? The television was expensive, and purchased in this case just describes the television. So that's an adjective. Let's look at this example. The poem written by Paul appeared in the magazine. Again, written kind of looks like the verb, but if we read it carefully, we'll see that appeared is my verb and written is just describing the poem. What poem? The poem written by Paul, right? So these are adjectives. This is like saying the good poem or the bad poem or the happy poem or the expensive TV or the big TV or the small TV, right? They're just adjectives, but they go after the noun, not before. So yeah, I hope this explanation helps clear that out or clear that up, sorry. So now let's look at an example. How will TOEFL evaluate this? So let's see. It says the packages mailed at the post office will arrive Monday, right? If we read it all, we'll see that over here is the verb, right? Will arrive. What or who will arrive? Probably the packages, right? And mailed in this case is a past participle, right? It does come from a verb, but I don't think that's the verb or another verb because the packages can't mail, right? They're not animate objects. They're not like you and me. They can't move, right? They're just packages. They're things. So we're not going to need any type of the verb have or be. So we don't use have or were. It's not necessary to use, in this case, an object pronoun, right? Or any type of pronoun. We already have a subject. So in this case, the best option is going to be the adverb, right? The adverb here simply adds a little bit more of information, right? Like what packages, the packages mailed, the packages just mailed, right? Not the packages that were mailed yesterday or 2 days ago, right? Like just mailed like recently, very recently. In this case, answer D is the best answer, right? It's not necessary to put any other type of verb or auxiliary elements or pronoun or subject or object elements. Okay, so now we're going to go with the little explanation here. And this explanation is very important because it gives you a new piece of information, right? We have two things we already know. A past participle often ends in ed, but there are also many irregular past participles, right? For many verbs, including ed verbs, the simple past and the past participle are the same and can be easily confused, right? So we know this, the ed form of the verb can be simple past, the past participle of a verb, or an adjective. So for example, it's an adjective when there is another verb in the sentence, like the picture painted by Karen is now in a museum, right? Painted in this case is an adjective because it just describes the picture, right? Plus the picture can paint. It is a past participle when it has some form of the verb be or have, in this case, has. She has painted this picture. But very carefully here, we have to also remember that the past simple exists, which means that it's not necessary to have a verb to be or a verb have, right, before the past participle, but it's still a verb in past simple. In this case, she painted this picture is the verb. It's not an adjective. So we just have to keep that in mind, right? That we can still be working with the simple past. So in this case, the most important thing is to basically ask ourselves if the subject can do the action. Can she paint? Yes. Can the picture paint? No, right? So that is descriptive. That's an adjective. Okay, so we're going to do exercise 5. Exercise 5 tells us each of the following sentences contains one or more past participles. Underline, like always, the subjects once and the verbs twice. Circle the past participles and label them as either adjectives or verbs. Then indicate if the sentence is correct or incorrect. So let's look at number 1. The money was offered by the client was not accepted. Whoa, that just sounds wrong, right? So we have here a verb structure, was offered, and we have here another one, was not accepted. And actually, we're going to look at this in skill 6 and 7 and 8. We need connectors when we have two verbs. We can't just have two verbs like that because they would need two subjects. In this case, the money is only one subject, unless there's like a connector like and, or, but, yet, so, right? So in this case, we circle this, was offered. Offered is a past participle. And since before it is a verb to be like was, it's a verb. Accepted is also a past participle. And since before it, there is a variation of the verb be, was, it's also a verb. And finally, well, the money is the subject, but it's incorrect because we have two verbs, right? And it's only necessary to have one and one noun. So in this case, I think the correction would be to eliminate this was, so we could make it an adjective, and then it could say something like the money offered by the client was not accepted, right? Now let's look at number 2. The car listed in the advertisement had already stalled. So we had over here a verb structure, had already stalled, and stalled is my past participle. Since before it, there is a variation of the verb have or has or be, it's a verb. And then who or what had already stalled? The car listed in the advertisement, right? In the advertisement is an object of preposition. Listed here is also a past participle, but since before it, there is no verb to be or verb have, it's an adjective and it doesn't do any harm, so it's correct, right? Okay, so now I'm going to leave on the screen exercises 3 to 7, so you can do them. And we will check them in a moment, right? And after we finish checking 3 to 7, then we'll go to 8 to 10. Okay, so pause the video and do these exercises, and then we will check them. Okay, ready? So number 3 says the chapters were taught by the professor this morning will be on next week's exam. So we have here a verb structure, were taught, and we have another one here, will be, right? Who or what will be or were taught, the chapter, so that's only one subject. Taught is a past participle, but in this case, it's a verb, right? Because it's before it is a variation of verb be, which is were. And will be, in this case, is just a verb, right? But yeah, so we have a double verb. Well, let's say this is the verb also, right? This is a verb structure. But the same problem as number 1, we have double verb, right? So it's going to be incorrect. The correction here would be maybe to eliminate were and just leave it as the chapters taught by the professor this morning will be on next week's exam, right? Okay, let's check well, let me just check it. Yeah, it's incorrect, double verb. Number 4 says the loaves of bread were baked in a brick oven at a low temperature for many hours. Were baked is my verb structure right here. And we circle it because it's a past participle. And it's also a verb because before it, there is a variation of the verb to be, right? Were. And who or what were baked? The loaves, right? Or the loaves of bread. And I think that's everything, right? So this one is correct. Yeah, no problem here. Okay, let's check number 5. The ports were reached by the sailors were under the control of a foreign nation. So we have were reached, which is a verb structure, and were over here, which is another verb structure. Reached is a past participle, and since before it there's a variation of the verb be, it's a verb. So the same thing, we have a problem because we have double verb. The ports is the subject, but it's incorrect. So in order to make it correct, again, we have to eliminate this were, and it could just say the ports reached by the sailors were under the control of a foreign nation, right? Okay, let's look at number 6. Those suspected in the string of robberies were arrested by the police. Okay, so here we have were arrested, which is a verb structure. We circle arrested because this is a past participle. And since before it, there is a variation of the verb be, it is a verb. Who or what were arrested? Those suspected in the string of robberies, right? Suspected is also a past participle because it ends with ed, right? And it's part of the verb structure, like when you say I suspect you. But since there is no variation of the verb be or have, then it's only going to be an adjective and it doesn't do any harm. So number 6 is correct, right? Number 5 incorrect, double verb, and number 6 correct. Yes. Okay, number 7, the pizza is served in the restaurant. In this restaurant is the tastiest in the country. So is served is a verb structure, and is the tastiest is another verb. Served is a past participle. And since before it, there is a variation of the verb be, is in this case, it's a verb. Who or what is served or is the tastiest? The pizza, that's my subject. But the same thing, double verb, so it's incorrect, right? We would have to maybe eliminate this, and then it could just say the pizza served in this restaurant is the tastiest in the country, okay? So now let's go with number 8 to 10. I'm going to leave it like this for a moment so you can do it. Pause the video, please, and we'll check it in a moment, okay? All right, ready? Let's look at number 8. The courses are listed on the second page of the brochure, have several prerequisites. So are listed is a verb structure, right? In this case, it has listed, which is a past participle. And since before it, there is a variation of the verb be, it's a verb, right? But there is another verb, right? Which is over here, have. So again, the same problem. We have the subject courses, but it's a double verb problem, so it's incorrect. So in this case, we would have to probably eliminate are, and then it could say the courses listed on the second page of the brochure have several prerequisites, right? Okay, let's look at number 9. All the tenants were invited to the Independence Day barbecue at the apartment complex. So were invited is my verb structure. Invited is a past participle. So that is going to be a verb, not an adjective, because before it there is a was, were, in this case, a variation of the verb be. Who or what were invited? All the tenants. And there's no problem there. So this one is correct, right? There's no adjective either. So yeah, it's correct. And let's look at number 10. Any bills paid by the first of the month will be credited to your account by the next day. So we have here will be credited as part of a verb structure. Credited is a past participle, and since before it there's a variation of the verb be, it is a verb. And there is another verb or past participle, sorry, which is paid. This is the variation of a verb, right? Where I say, I pay you, I paid you yesterday. But since there is no variation of the verb be or have, it's an adjective and it doesn't cause any trouble, right? So who or what will be credited? Any bills or any bills paid by the first of the month. And this one is correct, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you have questions, let me know in the comments. And if not, then I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, and I will see you. Bye.